Welcome to the inaugural video content of Leadership Broad. This is the first of what I hope to be many more video about Leadership Broad. My name is Tim, and I will be your host and narrator for our discussion. You can also check out my blog. You can see the site here on the screen to read many articles I have written about the same topic. Let's get our discussion started, shall we? As the world is fighting a COVID-19 pandemic, another slow-moving but more deadly pandemic has been ongoing for decades. A great scientist, Albert Einstein, once said, "In the midst of a crisis, such as a COVID pandemic crisis, lies a great opportunity." This is once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to expose and root out leadership fraud being perpetrated in government, in society, in corporations big and small around the world. Leadership fraud has been ongoing long before 2020. COVID pandemic merely accelerates and exposes it for the world to see. So to get started, let's take a look at the state of leadership and leadership development prior to year 2020. To review the state of leadership and leadership development, I selected 5 out of thousands of articles over the past few years that can provide us with a good overview and summary. So let's take a brief dive into each one of them. A global study in year 2017 by management consulting firm McKinsey found only 11% of more than 500 executives surveyed agreed that their leadership development program produced the desired results. This means a staggering 89% believe they're failing. This study identifies several key factors crucial to the success: the need for proper mindset and behavior modeling and modifications, support system, and holistic development reaching all levels of organization. TrainingIndustry.com says that leadership development is a $366 billion global industry. An estimated $166 billion annually is spent right here in the USA alone. Yet, the results are nothing but colossal failures. Again, they're pointing to the same critical factors missing: culture, i.e. mindset and behavior, support system, and a very narrow focus, meaning a one-size-fits-all mindset. Another study to look at. According to a recent Fortune magazine survey, only a tiny 7% of CEOs believe that their companies are building effective leaders, and just 10% said that their leadership development programs have clear business impacts. Why is it after so much money and effort being put into developing leaders, there's still so many bad leaders out there? Is it bad training, or bad leaders, or maybe a little bit of both? In a recent Gallup study, one of the largest and most comprehensive study involving 27 million employees, 2.5 million managers in 196 countries, the study shows companies fail at hiring and promoting good managers at the stunning rate of 82%. It is important to know that what Gallup considers great managers are those who can lead their people by engaging them. So all these articles point to the two possible conclusions of why very few leaders exist. The first one is that most organizations fail at hiring or promoting leaders, meaning they hire or promote the wrong person. Second, many organizations just have bad leaders, and bad leaders simply don't develop future leaders, even if they keep throwing lots of money at it. Their understanding of what it means to lead people is just broken. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the state of leadership and leadership development prior to the world being hit by COVID pandemic. In case we need more evidence for the lack of leadership, even before COVID pandemic, here's my top 5 list: income inequality, racial and gender inequality, worsened climate and environmental crisis, rising famine, starvation and mass migration, rising autocracy, The fragile leadership is corrupting and destroying corporation, government, and society from within. Unless we address this, the impact will be much, much worse than COVID-19 pandemic. To stop leadership fraud pandemic, we need to understand what the root cause is and what is not. Only then we can solve the leadership fraud problem, a big topic for another day. There are 5 topics we will discuss that I hope can bring some light to the root cause of leadership fraud. Knowing the fraud, understanding what leadership principle is and what is not, know the origin and the history of the word lead, learn to spot the imposter and the genuine leadership. So let's get started. First, we must learn and understand the most common fraud being perpetrated in the name of leadership. There are 3 most common but absolutely wrong association people use to identify leaders and leadership. They wrongly think that leaders must have these attributes or traits. The most common but popular misconception is that leaders must have power and authority. Second is wealth and fame. And finally, they must have education degree, skills, knowledge, and experience. Let's take a deeper look at each one of them, shall we? Power and authority are the most common and popular form of leadership fraud. Many see titles like president or CEO as proof of leadership because they carry ultimate power and authority. Actually, positions and titles don't automatically make someone a leader. I wish it's that simple and easy. In fact, the opposite is true. The more power and authority someone has, the harder and the less likely for someone to become a leader. The second most popular but wrong association is wealth and fame. Many see famous people like Kim Kardashian or the wealthiest person in the world, Jeff Bezos, as leaders. So their fame, success, and wealth make them leaders. Actually, just like power and authority, wealth and fame cannot make you leaders. In fact, the opposite is also true here. The more wealth and fame someone has, the harder and the less likely it is for someone to become a leader. And finally, the same goes with education, skills, and experience. Many see Cristiano Ronaldo and Elon Musk as leaders. It is without a doubt, Ronaldo is perhaps one of the greatest football player ever, and Elon Musk is one of the greatest innovator ever with his electric car company Tesla. Once again, skills and talent can make you successful, but cannot make you leaders. In fact, the more skills, education, and experience someone has, the harder and the less likely it is for someone to become a leader. All these are wonderful things for everyone to pursue, but these are tools for a leader, not driving factors that make you a leader. It means these tools can make you a better leader, but they cannot make you a leader. Please make sure you understand this distinction. Let me repeat this again. All these tools can certainly make you a better leader, but they cannot make you a leader. If none of these tools can make you a leader, what can? Now that we understand the many forms of leadership fraud, we will next discuss the key principle of leadership. Just a quick recap. Leadership is not defined by power, authority, wealth, fame, education, skills, and experience. They're not drivers of leadership. So what drives leadership? What defines leadership? And what makes someone a leader? The answer to that question is purpose. Leadership is purpose-driven. Leadership mindset and act begins with purpose. Purpose is not just about achieving goals. It's about living a life greater than you and your circumstances. A quick recap. If leadership is driven by purpose, then it is an act driven by and for the greater good, not based on your own desires or goals. Let's take a deeper dive and learn about the origin, history, and the evolution of the word lead. The setting is early medieval period in 800 to 900 AD, and Scotland was the location. There are 2 root words in which the word lead is based on. The first one is an Old English word, leden, which means showing the way. What way are we supposed to show and demonstrate, you ask? The answer you will find in the second root word, lethal, which is an even older English word which means a cause along one's way. This simply means there must be a cause in one's life journey. So if you combine those two words in simple English, it means purposeful life. Let's look at the evolution, or I should say, corruption of the word lead from the medieval age into the modern age, anything post 1600 AD. Originally in medieval age, the concept of lead is about a cause, life journey. Since 1600 AD, it has evolved or been corrupted into in first place. The original application of lead is about purpose in life and service of others. Since then, it has evolved or been corrupted into possession or position in life, which means mostly about power, wealth, and fame grab. In conclusion, leadership is originally about service and greater good. Now it's all about possession or position. The practice of leadership has been corrupted so badly that we need to attach new words just to describe what leadership should be about. Terms like shared leadership, servant leadership, bottom-up leadership, team, transformational, motivational leadership, and many more all have been used to describe leadership, even though all these words are captured in the original meaning of the word lead. This is how corrupted and fraudulent leadership concept and practice have become. Now that we understand the principle, origin, and evolution, corruption of leadership better, let's look at the practice of leadership, starting with the fake ones first, the imposter. Because application of leadership is a huge topic, we will focus the imposter discussion strictly on corporate leadership. I hope one day to do videos focusing on leadership in government and society as well. So there are a few key areas we can use to spot evidence or lack of evidence in corporate leadership. This is not an all-inclusive list, just some key ones. Employee well-being, succession planning, employee engagement, and sustainability. Our discussion will focus only on one particular area. Employee well-being, which I organize into 4 different categories. Financial compensation like salary, bonus, stocks. Non-financial compensation, holiday, paid leave, training. Physical and mental health, family maternity leave, mental health support, and finally work-life balance. Due to the plentiful available of data, the focus of our discussion will be on financial compensation, specifically salary. It is by far the easiest and the most effective way to spot any evidence of leadership or lack thereof. If corporations are not willing to treat their employees well, whom they meet daily, by paying them a living wage, it is unlikely they will treat customer, environment, or society well, those they hardly ever meet. So let's take a look at a recent study conducted by Institute for Policy Studies comparing salary of CEOs and workers from 100 companies with the lowest median worker wages. I included the links so you can read the full detailed report yourself. Here's the finding of the study. Corporate boards are bending the rules in 2020 to pump up already huge CEO pay, even as the companies perform poorly and many workers lost pay, hours, jobs, and risk their livelihood to keep the economy running. And this was done under the explicit approval of US government. Here's the summary of the study, so let's take a deeper dive, shall we? The study compares 2 groups of companies. Let's call the first one Group A, which consists of 100 S&P publicly traded companies with the lowest median worker pay, and the second one, Group B, which consists of 51 companies among the Group A companies that bent executive pay rules during the pandemic just to pump up their CEO pay. First, looking at the median CEO pay, Group A CEO pay increased by 15% in 2020 during a pandemic, while Group B CEO pay increased double Group A CEOs to 29%. Second, looking at the median worker pay, Group A workers' pay increase is flat, but Group B workers' pay went down by 2%. And finally, looking at the CEO worker pay ratio, Group A ratio is a ridiculous 689 to 1, and Group B ratio is an even more outrageous 830 to 1. So for Group B companies, it'll take an average worker 830 years, the equivalent of about 10 lifetimes, to earn the same income as CEO would typically earn in 1 year. We can conclusively say leadership doesn't exist for any of these companies. Two key points. First, as if CEO worker pay ratio of 689 to 1 is not bad enough, some companies feel the need to pump up their CEO pay even more and make the ratio 830 to 1, and did it in the middle of a pandemic even though their worker pay went down. Second, it is no surprise that the same corporate boards and CEOs who give themselves huge pay raise still think $28,000 or $30,000 is a living wage in America. Unfortunately, these two key points go hand in hand. Here's a list of some of the companies in the study that pump up their CEO pay during COVID pandemic. Some are well-known names like Chipotle Mexican Restaurant, Hilton Hotel and Resort, Dollar Tree Stores, Carnival Cruise, Tyson Food, Coca-Cola Drink Company. There are many others with even worse pay gap. If they can treat their employees this bad, can you imagine what they would do to their customers, environment, and society in general? These CEOs are portrait of greed and arrogance, not leadership. And finally, let's end our discussion on a high note and see the true examples of leaders and leadership. To illustrate what a leader and leadership look like, I want to introduce to you a small Seattle-based credit card processing company with approximately 200 employees and the story of its CEO, Dan Price. Watch the following video clip when he announced his plan to his employees in 2015 and explained the reason he did it.
It's been said that happy employees make for happy customers, and that equals a successful company. One entrepreneur made headlines in 2015 when he decided to test out that theory. Dan Price, CEO of Gravity Payments, a credit card processing company, shook up the business world when he announced that he would raise his company's minimum wage to $70,000. Yes, $70,000, their minimum wage annually. And get this, he slashed his own salary by $1 million to help make it happen.
Meet Dan Price, the 30-year-old CEO of little-known Seattle-based Gravity Payments, who on Monday made this startling announcement to his 120-person staff.
And we're going to have a minimum $70,000 pay rate for everyone that works here.
You heard that right. Every employee at the small credit card payments company will be scaled up to a minimum annual salary of $70,000.
Why do you call it? Price says revenue soared and headcount grew by 70%. In the media, he was celebrated, but also heavily criticized. Fox News called him a tree-hugging socialist, but Harvard Business School hailed his company as a success, even during the pandemic when businesses took a turn for the worse. He says his motto is always invest in people. And look, if only we had more CEOs who say they care about the quality of life of their employees. So what could American corporations learn from this hip 30-something entrepreneur with shoulder-length hair and Brad Pitt looks? Those are Inc.com's words, not mine. I'm just the messenger. So what does Dan Price think of capitalism in America, Joe Biden's presidency, and the fight for a $15 minimum wage? How's his company doing? Let's ask him. Dan Price, CEO of Gravity Payments, joins me now. Dan, thanks so much for coming on the show. First off,
thanks for having me, Maddie.
Let's talk about your remarkable story. Let's talk about your story, Dan. What made you take the leap back in 2015 to up your employees' salaries and cut your own by $1 million?
Well, it was just simply the right thing to do. And I think I don't deserve the amount of credit I'm getting for it. I think it just shows how low the bar is. But initially, one of my employees approached me and let me know that she had to take a second job at McDonald's to afford to pay her bills, even though she was doing just as good of a job for the company as I was doing and arguably adding more value at times. And then a second employee, kind of explained something similar a few years later. But then in 2015, I was on a hike with a friend, and she was explaining to me how a $200 rent increase was making her life completely unlivable. And I'm like, wow, this is such a hardworking, just like anybody, if anybody deserves a living wage, like this person does. And yet, we're not paying that. So I just was angry enough and upset enough at how everything works that I took the plunge, and it's worked out great.
Any act of leadership, what Dan Price did, requires self-sacrifice. When someone donates $1 billion out of 100 billion he owns, though it's a generous act, most likely it's not an act of leadership. It's a PR campaign. Don't be fooled by many acts like this. When Dan Price reduced his own salary from $1 million to $70,000, that's a sacrifice, and that's an act of leadership, and he did it for the welfare of his own employees. All leaders have one trait in common: humility. It is the most important and foundational traits of a leader. Not power and authority, not wealth and fame, not education, skills, or experience. To prevent much deadlier pandemic inflicting our world in the future, we need many more leaders. Leaders like Dan Price for our corporations, the late Nelson Mandela for our government, and Malala Yousafzai for our society. If you don't know who the last two are, I urge you to check them out and be ready to be inspired. Let me close our discussion with a leadership challenge to all of us, only if you choose to accept it. Understand the impact of leadership has on our workers, environment, and society in general. Then review our own association and engagement as customer to a restaurant or citizens to our favorite mayor. And finally, if the impacts are unacceptable, like workers or our environment are treated poorly, then do something about it. Step up and be the next Dan, Nelson, or Malala.